When you picture the cause of global warming, you probably picture something like this: massive steel hulls burning heavy, tar-like fuel oil, pumping thick black smoke into the open ocean. It's the ultimate symbol of dirty, unregulated industry. Regulators are cracking down hard. The International Maritime Organization, the UN agency that regulates global shipping, recently rolled out a framework demanding net zero emissions by 2050. Major choke points are joining the fight too. The Panama Canal even created special net zero slots, allowing only the greenest vessels to skip the line. Ship owners are scrambling to show they get it. They're pouring billions into new vessels and massive PR campaigns, literally promising to go all the way to zero, painted right on the hull. It's a rush to assure investors that the future of ocean freight is entirely green. Some companies are taking it a step further, rolling out sleek sci-fi renders like Japan's Super Eco Ship 2050. It looks amazing in press releases, signaling a bold, high-tech commitment to saving the planet. But there's a serious problem with this narrative. Why is an industry that accounts for a tiny fraction of global emissions taking the brunt of international climate anxiety? This chart shows global greenhouse gases. That tiny 2.3% sliver, 900 million tons, is the entire shipping network. But look at the heavyweights. Coal and oil power plants take up 38%, producing almost 20 times the emissions of all cargo ships combined. To put that in perspective, the entire global merchant fleet emits less carbon than the domestic coal plants of a single large country. This bar chart measures efficiency by looking at grams of CO2 emitted per ton nautical mile. That's the energy required to move 1 ton of cargo 1 mile. Airplanes sit way at the top, over 900 grams. Trucks hover around 150. And down at the bottom, ships at roughly 20 grams. Ocean freight is the most carbon-efficient transport mode humanity has ever built. Think about a very large crude carrier, or VLCC. One of these massive ships can move 2 million barrels of oil across an ocean, using exponentially less fuel per barrel than trucks or trains. By aggressively penalizing ocean freight, regulators are placing the heaviest burden on the most efficient link in the entire global supply chain. Why focus on ships? It comes down to political convenience. Shipping operates in international waters. It doesn't have local voters. It is far easier to pass strict rules on a stateless ocean industry than to force millions of commuting citizens to change how they drive. There is also a massive PR incentive. Launching a brand new LNG-powered megaship creates great photo ops and viral social media posts. Quietly retrofitting a domestic cement kiln cuts far more carbon, but it doesn't generate headlines. But here we hit a hard engineering bottleneck. Politicians pass laws demanding strict net zero timelines, while the actual physics of alternative marine fuels simply cannot keep up with the mandates. This matrix outlines the reality of these proposed alternative fuels. Liquefied natural gas, or LNG, cuts carbon, but suffers from methane slip, releasing a much more potent greenhouse gas. Methanol is easier to handle, but has half the energy density of fuel oil, meaning ships can't travel as far. And ammonia produces 0 carbon, but it is highly toxic. A single spill could be lethal to the crew. This diagram illustrates where the real, immediate emissions reductions are actually coming from. It's not magical new fuels, but incremental operational tweaks, things like advanced hull monitoring, waste heat recovery systems, and optimized weather routing. Regulators use the global supply chain as a high-stakes laboratory for unproven, expensive fuels, while heavier polluting domestic industries carry on with business as usual. We saw this tension peak in October 2025 at the International Maritime Organization headquarters in London. This extraordinary session was billed as the historic moment where binding net zero fuel standards and carbon pricing would finally become international law. Instead, the session ended in a fractured, divided vote. The landmark framework was pushed back by a full year. Member states had to face the reality that the infrastructure and technology simply weren't ready for a global rollout. The United States led a significant portion of the pushback. President Trump explicitly rejected the proposed global carbon levy, calling it a green new scam tax that would ultimately cripple American consumers by driving up the cost of imported goods. Powerful Greek ship owners, who control a massive portion of the world's tonnage, also sounded the alarm. They argued that forcing unready regulations and incomplete fuel supply chains onto the market would inevitably inflate costs for everyone and could ironically lead to higher overall emissions. You cannot legislate a technological breakthrough. Forcing mandatory compliance timelines before the actual engineering exists doesn't clean up the oceans. It just creates political gridlock and market instability. The shipping industry absolutely needs to decarbonize, and to its credit, the sector is spending billions of dollars right now on research and development to figure out how to do that safely. But we have to remember the stakes of this transition. 90% of everything humanity eats, uses, and buys requires this exact maritime network to function. Without it, economies stall and store shelves go empty. This incredibly efficient network is run by over 1 million seafarers around the clock. Their physical safety, especially when handling experimental, highly toxic fuels, cannot be compromised just to satisfy political optics. Until global leaders are willing to hold their massive domestic polluters, the coal plants and the endless lines of highway traffic, to the exact same strict standards they demand of the oceans, scapegoating the shipping industry is just a dangerous political distraction.